Well, I might have lied a little. We didn't hardly get it started. Thanks for joining Shift Points. This is a little bit of a moment of truth. We're gonna go ahead and put some brake fluid in this and get the brakes bled. But we've checked all the fittings. We think everything's tight, but moment of truth. All right, here it goes. Any leaks?
You got fluid in it?
Yeah, there's fluid. Yeah,
is it going down?
If it is, it's real slow, which it should be. No. No, it's dry up here.
Is it going down?
If it is, it's very slow.
So the reservoir in this master cylinder needs to leak.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that.
It's going to take.
It's gonna take a lot of brake fluid.
It's like a quart to fill this thing up. This is going to be a process, I'm sure. Get me my glasses.
Yep, 1 second.
You got the camera running?
Yeah. Yeah, what's your language, daddy?
Oh, these ladies. Good.
You tighten up all these fittings on this
Yeah.
reservoir master cylinder.
Okay.
You check all the ones on the portion valve.
Yeah. Those are the ones that double tightened everything there.
Yeah, there's 50 right here on this thing.
I know. So basically with this reservoir up here and the master cylinder being under there, you should be able to gravity bleed everything, right? You should be able to open up the bleeders, is what we've been doing, pour the brake fluid in here, and this, since it's by far the highest point to everything else, should push brake fluid to everywhere. Should fill up the master cylinder under the truck, and then it should push it back to the rear brake lines, which is what we have those bleeders open right now. So that's what we're working on doing, trying to get all that full. We'll come back to this. Yesterday evening, you guys saw us working on the trying to get the brakes bled. So what we were working on there in that little section was letting everything gravity bleed. So that process takes a little time, and we got pretty late on this last night. We got pretty tired from working all evening trying to get this thing, as many parts of it wrapped up as we could. And then Dad comes out so we tightened up all the bleeders. Dad comes out this morning, finds 3 pools of brake fluid, one under the right front caliper, and then both of the rear calipers as well were also had a big pool of brake fluid under them. So turns out that this whole system will definitely gravity bleed, especially if you have some leaks. Let me show you what we got into with this. So if you look on this caliper, the way that this piece is made, if you look on this side, there's a little notch here. Let's see if I can get close enough so you can see this notch. There's a notch there. And really, you should be able to turn that 180 degrees from how it is right now, and that notch would seat itself basically. But for some reason, there's a little bit of a tolerance problem. That notch was actually getting against the caliper, which had that fitting kind of jacked up. So no matter how much you tightened it, it would still just leak. Luckily, we looked at it when I got here. This afternoon, this evening, and luckily, if we noticed, if you just flip it over, put it up that way, everything mounts up as it should. And there's no clearance issues or anything. So we've got that leak stopped all the way around now. I got under the truck and checked up my tightening job. Turns out I hadn't done such a super job. None of them were just pouring, but we had 3 different ones that were just like a real slow weep. but luckily I think I've got all those tightened up now. So we are letting this thing kind of finish up its gravity bleed for a little while, and then we're going to start pumping the brakes and see if we can get them fully bled out. Shouldn't be too big of an issue now that we have everything. The reason that you want to make sure that you don't have any, leaks at any of those brake fittings is whenever you start to bleed them, you start pumping the brakes, you're going to be sucking air into the system. So no matter how long you pump and do all this, you're going to be pulling more air in. You never get them bled. And then if you have little leaks like that pulls all that air in, man, it just makes a mess. And you get brake fluid all in the whole, or you get air all in the brake system, the fluid system, and man, it just takes forever to get it out. So you want to try and let this thing do its job, gravity bleed, get as much air out as possible so that when you start pumping the brakes, it's just fluid coming out of the bleeders and you're good. So once we let this thing bleed for a little while, or to gravity bleed for a little while longer, we'll start pumping it and go from there. We already put the we already put oil in it. It's got an oil filter on it. We've got the cooling system. We went ahead and put the antifreeze in it. So we've started that process. I think we have all the fluids in it now, except for the power steering fluid and adding transmission fluid. And we're still kind of debating. I know I said yesterday that we were going to crank this thing inside here. But the thing is we have a customer truck that really needs to come in here. He wants to try and get that done by the middle of April. It's a 66 C10 that we're going to put vintage air on and power steering, a couple other things. You guys will see all that when it comes in. He's already said we could video it while we work on it. So we really need to get this thing at least moved over and get that done so that we can get a kind of ahead of his deadline a little bit too. So if this thing will crank, since we've got the brakes bled now, we might be able to just roll it outside, put the wheels and tires on it, roll it outside, crank it, see how that all works, see if everything's good, and then we can pull it over into the back shop and get the other truck in here and get that done, and then the pressure's kind of off of us, and we can get fully back on this thing. But really, we're really close. We got to get this inner fender back in, but as far as getting ready to fire it, I've said it 100 times. We're doing it today. We're going to do it today. But whether we do it in here or we do it out in front of the shop, that'll be kind of the question. So let's see what we get the brakes bled, and then go from there. We filled up the power steering in the power steering reservoir, and I got the steering wheel put on here. This is not the steering wheel that's going to stay on here, but it'll serve its purpose for now. And what I'm doing is I'm very, very slowly, because it's overfilled just a little, because the fluid has to go into the rack and fill the rack up too. Very, very slowly turning this thing so that we can get the steering bled also. Okay. Well, I'm like not hardly half to turn in right now. One, two, three. Three
turns?
Yep.
Use it a turn and a half.
I was right in the middle. What we were doing there was we knew the steering was straight, or at least as straight as we could have it, but we didn't know, and we put the steering wheel on the correct way, but we wanted to make sure that we had the steering wheel centered where it was supposed to be. So it was.
Did you go back to center?
No, I haven't yet. You want to go back to center? So let me go back to center. So there's 1.5. That should be straight ahead. Should be.
Steering wheel lined up pretty close.
Yeah, it's very close, and the steering's straight ahead. So yeah, it's perfect.
Good.
Hey, sometimes I know what I'm doing. Don't I? I won't say it on camera. While Dad was filling up some of the fluids, I got in here and did a quick double check of my Ron Francis fuse panel. So you can see here, everything's still all good. I just took my screwdriver and made sure all those connections are tight. The 4 bolts that hold this in place are still a little loose, so I'm gonna go up here and tighten those up. Dad keeps asking me if I'm comfortable in my wiring. I keep saying yes, and I think I am, I've run through every connection like 100 times in my head. So let's see, we're gonna fill up, we're gonna put about 4 quarts of transmission fluid in this thing. Since we're not gonna drive it, it's not a huge deal, so we're not gonna go through the gears, but we need, it has to have some fluid in it. So we'll put about 4 quarts in it and then add until it's full. So that's another thing. I still, once I get these fuse panels tightened up, I'm gonna get in here and plug all the computers and everything in. We were doing some welding on the truck when we put that, or when Dad put that brake switch in, and so I disconnected all the computers to make sure nothing crazy happened, nothing grounded out or any spikes in voltage or anything like that. So that needs to be plugged back in. And man, we're so close. We had all the fluids in it, and then I just happened to look in the floorboard of the truck and had a steady drip of antifreeze coming into the floorboard of the truck. If we go in here and look, that's where the heater was. I pulled it out, went ahead and pulled the heater core, the heater box and the heater core all out. The only problem is now that we have it out, we started looking at it to see kind of what the deal was, and we're not seeing any leaks in it like we thought we would. So you go right here, there's, you know, it's just not dripping out of it. So really the only thing it could have been, even though I checked the hoses and checked the clamps and everything was on there, and I had to cut the clamps off to even get them out of there. So maybe somehow it was leaking around the hose. I'm not 100% sure. But you can see inside the box, this is a 2-piece box. This goes up in here, clamps the heater core in place here. You can see kind of the surface rust that's in here, which makes me think that it had a leaking heater core at some point, just not sure yet. All right, we think we have everything ready. We just gotta hook up the battery cables. Just see what happens. Oh man, you have me nervous now.
What?
So you have me nervous now. I don't get that.
It's kind of I'm a little bit of a nervous time. Just hook the battery cables up. See if,
Smoke check.
yeah.
Sometimes I can wiggle the ground to get it off pretty quickly.
If anything happens, you go straight for that.
Okay.
And hook it, and I'll get the switch.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if a fuel pump. So look under it. I'm just gonna prime it.
All right. Prime, check engine lights on. That's a good sign. That's what it's supposed to
Get
do.
it primed and
Fuel
stopped.
pump primed and stopped. That's also
Make sure
good.
check under the hood. Make sure we got no leaks.
That's where I'm going. Oh, we got a leak. We got a leak. Fuel is
Voltmeter
pouring.
works.
Fuel's pouring out of the fuel tank. Hold on.
Fuel's pouring out what?
The fuel tank. It's from the top of it. Okay. I'll get the jack. Okay, so one of the fuel lines is not tight. So we're gonna go ahead and get the jack and drop the fuel tank, tighten those up, do another check with the fuel tank sitting there. Okay, so good and bad. Bad, the connections were loose, but that's also the good thing. The connections were definitely loose. And that was why we had fuel running out of the top of the tank. So we just did another check, we dropped the tank, tightened those up, did another check, and no leaks now. We primed it again with the tank down so we could see it. So now we're ready to try again. We do have fire extinguishers here and one on the other side as well, just in case. All right, put the battery cable back on.
Yep. You ready?
I guess so.
Turns over.
Any fuel oil pressure?
Haven't done yet.
Alright, no ignition. Just turn it over.
Don't lift anything unhooked to it.
Oh, I mean, possibly.
Should have lit.
2 sensors are definitely plugged in. Okay, let me check that. Let me grab a voltmeter real quick. That wire has to have power in the crank and start
It's like
position.
it's something along those lines.
But I thought that was where I had it, but let me check.
I'd say that's something along those
I'm
lines.
sure, I just don't know where else to put it.
It's turning over fine, and it should have, I think it should have fuel.
Key?
You ready?
Yep. I got 12 volts now.
Here, crown it.
Yep. We've got 11 volts there, so even in the crank position, so that's right. The injectors are being commanded to fire. If the spark plugs are firing, the fuel pressure is correct, and the injectors are clogged, it must be clean.
It's been sitting for a while.
7 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
Did you ever see any oil pressure? Did it ever come up at all?
That might be, it may not have picked up oil yet.
Hey, why not? I just was wondering if it did.
Let's try it, see.
Okay.
Still ain't got no oil pressure. I don't know. I know what you're wrong. Fuel gauge is working.
Well, tried to hit there. Did you hear that?
About that, yeah. Yes. Sounded like it touched her just a little bit.
Yeah. Check the fuel injectors are firing. In many cases, engines that have been sitting for a few months have old fuel which is turned to varnish and clogged the injectors. That's all right. It acts like it's trying to do something.
I hear
It's
something.
like cheap, cheap. You hear it like.
Evidently, the oil pressure's, when it's in start, the oil pressure's not registering. As you turn it off, you see the gauge move up and down, so I think it's got oil pressure.
Okay.
Spin her over. It's got showing 38 pounds right now.
Okay.
£58.
So it's supposed to. Okay. And the only thing left on their list is the injectors. Which makes sense. This has been sitting for a really long time.
You smell that?
Oh yeah, it's rough. Oh, gross. That
That's
is
the
dead
problem.
gas.
That's the problem. That
Shoot.
thing's been sitting full. That's exactly what's going on.
Yep.
All right.
So whoever for
Let's go get
for
our
anyone
hard
that's
light.
still watching,
Let's
we checked the fuel pressure. We did have 58 pounds. We unhooked the pressure, the gauge. We unhooked the pressure gauge. This is terrible, varnished, awful smelling gas that's been sitting in the fuel rails for probably since it was wrecked. So probably 10 years. Yeah. So we're gonna go up and well, we're just gonna have to check the injectors. We're gonna probably have to pull the injectors and clean them. So I want to show you guys this real quick. We're pretty darn sure it's the injectors because man, this thing just absolutely reeks. It's terrible smelling gas, really old and cruddy. I wanted to show you this super fast though. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the fuel rail off I think, and it should be time to just pull this whole assembly out. So the fuel rail's here, goes over. So this is where you guys saw that the other day. This is where the fuel comes in, loads up both these rails, and this tube's a crossover tube. So now this whole assembly should just lift out with the injectors and everything.
It's out of this side. Here.
Where'd you?
Strap on the coil bracket.
Hold on. I gotta clear my...
Careful, don't drop anything down the injector ports. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute.
Hold on, I gotta get my harness out of the way here. Oh, is what you're working on too? Hold on, let me get this clear and I'll be all the way and done.
Clips is...
Yeah. Okay, one's clear. Here, get all the room you need. Did you get the fuel? What's just coming out? Green.
Mm-hmm. It smells so nice.
Oh, rough.
We need to just run carburetor clearance through that, but we need to...
Well, we have hit another roadblock. This one should have been foreseeable. We definitely should have known this, but what do you do? So I got the fuel rail off here. We've got it sitting here. I've got parts cleaner all through it because, man, this fuel was awful. I mean, really, really bad. The injectors are here. And I know there's no way that you'll be able to see inside of these things. I'll try my best, but I'll be very surprised if you can. Get this light on high. See if I can kind of show you. Get that parts cleaner out of there. And then, no, I don't think you can see it, but man, they're just terribly, terribly varnished. I mean, terrible, terrible, terrible. The fuel injectors are just ridiculously varnished, which again, should have been completely foreseeable. We just didn't think ahead enough, to be honest with you. So we have a set on the way. They'll be here Monday. So, I hate to say it, but with a valiant effort, and we literally tried to crank it, you saw all that and everything, it's just didn't happen. I've got a video saying we're gonna have this thing running by the end of the weekend. Just not gonna happen. So we're pretty certain everything's cranking like it should. Everything's really turning over like it should be. This was the last thing that was on the list for no start from PSI. So really, we think we get these new injectors in here and some good fuel in it, and I think we're gonna be set. I think it's gonna fire right up, to be honest with you. So that's life. We wanted to get it running. We tried everything we possibly could. We called every parts store around, but no one had anything that we could get anytime soon, and if it did, they were like $1,000, which is just insane. So we got a set on the way from fuel injector connection. Those guys were super nice. We talked to them. We bought a set for another truck we did a while back, and man, they're just good guys. They're actually building a 54 Chevrolet truck also, and putting a 5.3 in it and everything. So it's a small world with this stuff sometimes. And yeah, so they'll be here Monday. So I guess next week you'll see it. Thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. I know this is a little bit of a letdown for me too, but it's life. What do you do? Make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We appreciate everybody that's subscribing and will subscribe. And once this gets to the end, make sure to click that subscribe button in the center. It really makes a difference. It really helps us out a bunch. Thanks so much. See you guys next time.